What exactly is Google X outside of glass and cars?
It would be tempting to call Google X Google's research lab, where the smartest computer scientists are looking at the next generation of Google products, but that kind of describes Google itself. So the way they delineate Google X is they call it a moonshot factory. It's the environment where they are looking at the most ambitious, the most aggressive, the most science fiction-like ideas to solve big world problems, and often with solutions that are hardware-based as opposed to most of the other parts of Google's business.
One of the things I got from you, it's like anything is fair game, like teleportation, levitation. I mean, they're really sort of looking at it all.
Yeah, you don't find many companies that will admit to having looked at teleportation, and perhaps they're making a point when they say they consider these things. But the idea is they will consider anything, and that with a fresh perspective and the right people, that you could potentially come up with some of these solutions.
So we know some of the most obvious projects they're working on there: Google Glass, self-driving cars, but you also make a reference, it's kind of like the Manhattan Project, where they developed the first atomic bomb. It also sounds like it could be a little scary.
Well, it's mostly pretty inspirational, I have to admit, and one of the more interesting projects that they seem to be working on, didn't quite get them to admit this, is bringing internet access to the entire world. And I tried to kind of suss out what the approach might be, and what I think I've settled on is, and this sounds very weird, but balloon-based internet access, so like flying broadband transmitters into the stratosphere. It sounds wild, but Google has the resources to try these things.
Wi-Fi hotspots in the air, essentially. Your story opens with an anecdote about Google buying MAKANI wind power. This is a startup that I visited a year ago now, which is like they make wind turbines that fly like airplanes. They're connected to the ground like a kite. It's
Right.
certainly very out there technology, but this is something that Larry Page is willing to make a bet on.
And they actually helped to fund MAKANI Power in its very early days. And this is a startup that's been around for 5 years, and they're now bringing it in-house, and they're committing to it. The MAKANI guys are going to move to Mountain View. And yeah, it's implausible, wind turbines that fly in the air. But the idea is, if you rethink these problems, from the very ground up, you can come up with innovative solutions.
So it all sounds like really cool stuff, but there's a business risk here, isn't there?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. If you look at Google's R&D budget, it has ballooned. It's almost, I think, $7 billion now in 2012. So if you're an investor, if you're a shareholder, you wonder about Google X, but you say, it is these wide-ranging curiosities of Larry Page and Sergey Brin that brought us not just search, but the Android business. And so you're probably willing to tolerate that, but obviously they will be looking very closely at things like Google Glass to see if it is revenue generating.
But the point is, and you mentioned it, that Larry and Sergey are behind this 100%, and they are putting tremendous resources here.
I mean,
right?
Sergey's spending all his time at Google X.
Right.
Tremendous resources, tremendous support. Not really looking at the bottom line, but thinking, can Google come and solve some of these big problems?